and we will be posting the recording on our website for the Southwest Border Food Protection and Emergency Preparedness Center. So with that, I would like to introduce Mr. George Reeves. He is the Cybersecurity Advisor with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Mr. Reeves works to foster collaboration and coordination on cyber preparedness, risk management, and incident response, and to provide cybersecurity resources, including training, exercising, and assessments in support of the nation's critical infrastructure, key resource sectors with state and local government. And the food and agriculture is one of our nation's critical infrastructure sectors. And so with that, Mr. Reeves, I will turn it over to you, sir.
There, can you guys hear me now?
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay. Well. Thanks for the invite. Thank you, Marshall. So thanks everyone for joining me. I just kind of want to, Marshall asked me to kind of speak about some of the threats and just some awareness practices for you guys to, stay a little more vigilant and not being a victim. Again, I want to kind of walk you through who we are, what we do, but more importantly, kind of tailor that in specifically to your guys' environment. Okay, so let me try and see if I can get my slides shared. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay, virtual thumbs up. Everybody can see my screen? I assume so. Okay, all right, everyone. So let me jump to the next slide real quick. So what I kind of want to start off first is I want to kind of introduce our agency. Hopefully you guys have heard of us before, but I won't take any offense if you guys have never heard of us. We're essentially a pretty brand new agency when, in the scheme of federal agencies. We're actually about 2.5 years young, but we've actually been operating in this capacity for 7, 8 years or so. I myself, 5 years. So previous to CISA, we operated under the Department of Homeland Security's headquarters element under the nomenclature of NPPD. So, National Protection Program Directorate doesn't really flow well when it in relation to cybersecurity. So Congress enacted basically a requirement to create this new agency, and voila, so we're here. So again, we consider ourselves, both the cybersecurity and infrastructure security. So infrastructure security is nothing more than physical security. Okay, so this is perimeter defense, active shooter, IEDs, things like that. That really you should be concerned about because you guys are, soft targets when you guys really think about it. So really, here we sort of kind of lays out our lanes of efforts. I myself, I do a lot of efforts toward partnership development. So that's, pounding the pavement, really busy on the speaker circuit, and really just trying to get to know the stakeholders. So again, there's 16 critical infrastructure sectors. Food and ag is one, but the other 15 that I work with, again, trying to build that relationship rapport, really trying to understand what your needs and requirements and weaknesses are so that we can really kind of, devise a strategy and really to help them broaden and increase their overall maturity. So information sharing, that you may have seen a lot of reports disseminating from us. In fact, I'm going to reference one today related to food and ag. And again, this is specifically to really give you guys the actionable information because it does good for us to really have all the information. So we make sure we push that information out so you guys can stay vigilant and be prepared. But capacity building is really fundamentally what I'm about. Again, working with you one-on-one and really just pointing you in a direction and overall just trying to build your overall cybersecurity practices. And a lot of efforts toward incident management, so response. So this weekend, you guys may have heard on the news, CISA kept us busy with a lot of the indications of incidents and hacks and things like that as well. But here, I think this slide really sort of paints a good picture. If anything, you walk away today and you want to associate, what CISA really is, really just think of us as the nation's risk advisors. So we're not here to, take over the situations, take control. We're a voluntary agency, a voluntary resource. In a sense, there's really nothing you're required to do unless you fall under some type of regulatory requirement, like on the chemical side. And lately, because of Colonial Pipeline, even on the pipeline side, there's some new regulatory requirements. But for the most part, 99% of the other folks, really, you don't need to interact with us at all. But we're really here, again, to be that focused, that on the ground representative, local asset to really help and advise and assist in moving forward. Okay. Now, this next slide here really just kind of paints a picture of who I am. So we've got about, when I came on board, there's only like 7 of us. Now we're up to about 44, 45. Okay, so we're really turning it up, getting folks on board. We're working really hard right now on getting somebody full-time out in New Mexico. I'm actually in San Antonio, so I cover, all the way from Houston to the Rio Grande Valley to El Paso, and I also have New Mexico as well. So this is only until we get somebody available. So if you guys know anybody who wants to live in Santa Fe and do what I do, reach out to me. I'd be happy to kind of talk to you. And we're just sort of waiting for the announcement to come out, but I'd be happy to talk with you more about the role. But again, I'm the face. I'm the one who I do a lot of assessments. I promote best practices. I try to build your overall capacity, and I try and listen and figure out really what your concerns and needs are. And lastly is coordinate when you guys are in a time of stress. I can point you in the right direction with the FBI, Secret Service, or even our own agency as far as helping you overcome the situation. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff, which is really why we're here today, which is really talking about some of the threats that are out there. So here we really see the 6 main risks that a lot of folks out there face every day, okay? There's always that insider threat. Active terrorism, is not going away. Cyber attacks, I think, is the big one that everybody's focused on, but maybe not so much for you guys. I think you guys are in Las Cruces and as well, maybe spread out throughout New Mexico. But, here in Texas, we got the hurricanes, the tornadoes, we got the freezing weather that can knock out our power grid, floods. So weather can absolutely create havoc on somebody's operational capacity. Pandemics, I'll be honest, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I didn't add this in here just because of COVID. Pandemics has always been a concern from years back, and I think for the most part, we're all seeing the realization of the effects of dealing in a pandemic environment. And lastly, it's accidents. The backhoe, the lightning strikes. Somebody, crashing into your facility. So the accidents are there as well. But again, these are sort of the generic type of risk that we face day in and day out. Now, every year, hopefully you guys, so the Office of the Directorate of National Intelligence, they create, they produce an annual threat assessment every year. So this year, I sort of kind of took out the good stuff. I really focused on the 4 main adversaries, which is Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. But please keep in mind, these are not the only adversaries. There's 30 plus countries that are capable of doing offensive cyber type of operations. But we, for the most part, really kind of keep our head on a swivel and really focus on what's going on with these 4. Now with Russia, they continue to be a top cyber threat. I think everybody is starting to recognize or associate their capability. They do continue to target critical infrastructure. Okay, we've seen it with what they did in Ukraine against the their power grid for 2 years. They knocked their power grid offline in the middle of winter, okay? But as well as Russia has no problem to actually consider cyber warfare as an acceptable option for them, okay? So, you know, they're going to keep quiet about it, but it is an option which they keep in their arsenal. Now, China, on the other hand, you know, they're an adversary I've been busy with, you know, working against ever since in my early Air Force days in early 2000s, when China was really targeting weapon systems, the military technology and things like that. And even when I got out and went into the private sector at oil and gas, there they were again. You know, they were really targeting a lot of the intellectual information to further themselves. And that could even cross into, you know, the developments that you guys do toward refining the processes for the food and agricultural space as well. They do possess substantial cyber attack capabilities, and they have no problems in pursuing any and all information that helps advance their program. Okay, so they have a 5-year plan they keep pushing out, which really illustrates the main focus areas for them to really improve their overall standing across the global stage. And as well as we've seen that they can cause localized temporary disruptions of critical infrastructure. Okay, now Iran is more of an adversarial. You know, they have a willingness to conduct aggressive cyber operations. They're more retaliatory. They're more tick for tack. But as well as they do have the ability to conduct attacks against critical infrastructure. They've been substantially known to attack the banking, financial sector. I think in the mid to 2000s, when they were attacking Wells Fargo, Chase, and all that, really trying to destabilize our financial stability. But as well as we've seen their interest targeting critical infrastructure like water, dams, but as well and as well as we've seen them target oil refineries. Saudi Aramco, they did a destructive campaign knocking out their enterprise environment where they had to rebuild their entire infrastructure from the ground up. But as well as lately, we've seen them target the water plants in Israel as well. So they do have the capability, the capacity, you know, so they are a viable adversary. Now, as far as North Korea, they do pose a growing espionage and threat and attack threat altogether, and they are capable of causing disruptions. You know, we've seen what they did here on the homeland when they attacked Sony Picture Studio in their retaliatory attack for that movie, that North Korean, you know, movie that they did. So it got in their network, and they really, you know, did devastation against their enterprise and their email system as well. But as well as they targeted Sands Casino and things like that. So they have targeted here in the homeland. But as well as predominantly North Koreans are known to target the financial sector. You know, with the heavy sanctions that are placed against them, they're really strapped for cash. So they do a lot of attacks toward the financial side, cryptocurrency exchanges, the SWIFT banking accounts. So a lot of the ransomware campaigns are being targeted for through North Korea. So I believe what was it? Not WannaCry is a prime example. All right, so let's talk about some significant cyber incidents that has really been happening for at least the last few months. So here in March, again, a whole slew. You'll see all the players in there. You'll see Russia, you'll see China, Iran, North Korea. Here in April, the same thing. More attacks. But here I wanted to highlight here in May. This is really relevant to you guys. So the end of, I think it was May 31st, early June of this year, the attack against the Brazilian JBS, a ransomware attack using the Reeves Now that may sound familiar, Reeves. So that's the same ransomware campaign that was targeted toward CISA, which I'll briefly mention. But this one, again, targeted one of the largest meat manufacturing and processing centers in the world. Okay, they got positions in the United States, Canada, Australia. And again, this is all attributed to Russian threat actors, just like what we saw with CISA. And then as of last month, again, more Russian activities, Iranian activities, Chinese activities. Again, the point is that these attacks are nonstop. They're endless. They're going to happen every single day. Okay, something is happening somewhere, whether you know about it or not. These are just the ones that are reported. Okay, these are just the ones that are reported, open source. But I guarantee you, there's probably 80% more that's going on that is not being reported. All right, so what about New Mexico? Okay, I wanted to think back and really try to find some relevant type of activities that may be helpful or for you guys. So here, Farmington, this is as of 2018, SamSam. If SamSam rings a bell, that's the same ransomware that was used to attack Atlanta, the Atlanta ransomware, okay? Here we see the Alamogordo, Lake County, Las Cruces, here, near and dear center for you guys, Gadsden, Presbyterian. Here we see Rio Rancho, New Mexico Highlands University, Roosevelt General Portales, ransomware attack in the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission, San Miguel County, Bernalillo County, Rio Arriba County, University of New Mexico Law School, Clovis Municipal, and last but not least, Los Alamos and Sandia. Okay, so this is all open source information I was able to uncover. So not sharing anything that is sensitive. But again, okay, so New Mexico is not immune. These attacks are going to happen every day. And again, these are only ones that we as a public know about what's actually going on. But what about for you guys? So here, again, I mentioned the JBS attack, the meat processing was late May, early June. But I wanted to kind of show you guys, look, there's been a lot of reporting of the cybersecurity concerns toward food and ag for quite some time. So right there, the one that says October 3rd, 2018, that's a product we released. Okay, this is a DHS product, so you guys can be happy to just copy that, Google it, DHS. It'll show you a nice product about specific targeting toward precision agriculture. Okay, and then fast forward a couple of years, in 2020, in September, here, article, survey on security threats of agricultural IoT, which is Internet of Things and smart farming. Okay, we're really trying to, everything's being automated, collected on the internet, and of course, because it makes work a lot more easier, but it also makes life a little more concerning because now we're opening up security vectors. Okay, we're introducing our system, our environment to the internet, which is really making it a more opportunistic or available to be compromised in some fashion or another. Here in December, this is actually a book that was written, Requirements for Cybersecurity and Agriculture Communication Networks. So as we sort of kind of read, again, a growing concern of the cyber-related concerns on the agricultural community. And last but not least, here, December 2022, or December 22, 2020, here's another article, Farmers Get Their Own Security Advice as Cyber Attacks Increase. So this is a United Kingdom report. So again, this is not just United States concern. This is international. This is global. Okay, so this is a concern for everybody because we're connecting a lot of things onto the internet now. So let me talk about the mechanics of a cyber attack. So kind of scale it back. What are the adversaries targeting? okay? And really, you know, the low-hanging fruit is going to be the smaller organizations. They're less sophisticated. They have the, you know, less funding, personnel, but you know, and largely these are used as staging areas, okay? Or what we used to call hot points. They'll get, you know, come here and they do their attacks from their infrastructure, okay? So, but again, sometimes they're just targeting them just because of you know, not necessarily that they're a viable target, but they could be. But really, it's more of a place to of a location for them to stage and really to start tailoring their targets a little more. We're, you know, refining their attack. Now, the intended targets is really everybody, small, medium, large. It really just depends on who you are. Do you have a secret sauce? Do you have something that somebody wants? Okay, so that's intellectual property. That's but as well as you could be a target. Somebody wants to target New Mexico, wants to cause havoc. Okay, but again, here in a sense to where you know, these networks tend to be a little more sophisticated. Okay, a little more defensive. But again, the intended targets could be here, where again the staging target, smaller organization, but maybe you have a pre-existing relationship with them. Okay, which is a lot of the stakeholder or supply chain attacks that we're seeing. Okay, there's a trusted relationship. They attack the smaller organization, and from there they move laterally into what their intended target is. Now, let me talk about. I want to kind of focus on supply chain threats. Okay, because that is largely what we're seeing today. Okay, where you don't need to be the intended target initially. Okay, because to cause some type of impact, they can just attack your suppliers. Okay, so Operation Cloudhopper, this is back in 2016. I think this sort of kind of painted the picture, provided the awareness or the concern of the attacks to supply chain. So this was an attack being perpetrated by APT-10. If you're not familiar with that nomenclature, APT-10 is China. Okay, so China was targeting managed service providers, which is still going on today. Okay, but they specifically targeted managed service providers to get their hooks in, and then from there escalate or laterally move to their clients. Okay, so we see a lot of this happening. So that proof of concept, that methodology is still true and is still being used today. SolarWinds. So here, back in December of last year, here we saw a targeted campaign by the Russians, attributed to the Russians, targeting SolarWinds. So if you're not familiar with SolarWinds is basically it's a managed service provider that provides fidelity into your network environment. Okay, you know, looking at your how much bandwidth, you know, really giving you that nice dashboard perspective of what's going on. So a lot of organizations use it, not just the federal government, but as well as a lot of private entities use technology like SolarWinds. So again, they attack SolarWinds, specifically a specific platform called Orion, and then from there, you know, they created Trojanized installation packages so that you know nothing better. You're downloading updates or installation package, and then lo and behold, you know, unknown to you, you're downloading and installing a Trojanized version of the platform. Okay, so we in return issued a variety of directives. Again, I mentioned information sharing. This is what we do. So we release a bunch of emergency directives to kind of help combat that situation. And then a few months later, Microsoft Exchange, O365, this was a zero-day attack. So zero-day, if you're not familiar with the term zero-day just means they're leveraging a vulnerability that is not known, okay? So it's not open to the public. We don't know a vulnerability exists. They figured out a vulnerability and they exploited it. So that's called a zero-day. So this has been perpetrated or attributed to China. So here, you know, they were targeting, again, who does not use Microsoft, mail? Okay, so again, but fortunately for this one, This targeted just a very specific. It had to be on-prem environment, meaning not in the cloud, not O365. But again, this caused a lot of havoc, a lot of concerns, and again, we issued Directive 2102 to help mitigate this situation. Now, as of this last weekend, CISA. So again, this is very fluid. There's still a lot of things going on, but here, what we know is that not an IT managed service provider. Again, I mentioned managed service provider many times. There's another IT managed service provider which supports a lot of services for international stance. Again, they were ransomware, and the blowback was at least 1,500 companies. Okay, at least that was reported. So in this case, at least that last sentence there, most of the organizations tended to be smaller, like dental offices and clinics and things like that. A lot of the smaller organizations, utilize this service for them. So we immediately issued us. Well, I don't want to just give us credit, but CISA and FBI issued a guidance for managed service providers and their customers that are affected by the CISA supply chain ransom attack. Okay. All right. So I wanted to point out this because I mentioned 0 day. I mentioned 0 day previously. 0 day are unknown vulnerabilities, exploits. Okay. But I wanted to include this because I wanted to paint a picture that not all the attackers are using 0 days. Using 0 days is very expensive. It's a lot of research and development. So what the Russians did to exploit SolarWinds took a lot of time and money and resources to manage that. But here's a report of this year, just a couple months ago, in April of this year. NSA, CISA, and FBI, we released this joint advisory, and we're basically saying, look, the Russians are targeting U.S. and allied networks. That title alone is there's nothing new in that title. That's nothing new. That happens every day. But what's in that red box is really the differentiator, really right there, because this highlights that the Russians are using known exploits. Okay, so if you have any one of these, Fortinet, Zimbra, Pulse, Citrix, a lot of folks use Citrix, VMware. Okay, if you use a combination of these things in one fashion or another, you may want to look into it because the Russians are exploiting these known vulnerabilities. Why? Because they know a lot of organizations are really not up to speed on patch management, on updating their systems. You know how they have Patch Tuesdays, or you see all the Apple updates. You see all these updates. These updates are essentially fixes. They're patches to fix holes. Okay, but they're betting that a lot of organizations are not going to be able to patch their systems in time, because a lot of organizations may take 30 days, 60 days. I've seen organizations take 90 days or more to apply updates or patches. Okay, so they're banking on that. So again, just kind of wanted to reiterate to show you guys that look, adversaries are hitting you with 0 days and with known vulnerabilities. So how can you mitigate this situation here? You apply patches. That's simply put. All right, so let's talk about cybersecurity awareness. Talk about some things that really help you harden yourselves when it comes to reducing your overall attack posture. So ransomware. We've been hearing ransomware, I think, every day. Believe me, ransomware is happening every day for us. We hear about it, but truthfully, there's not much that can be done if you guys are experiencing ransomware. There's literally 3 things you can do. Okay, if you've been ransomware, there's 3 things you can do. You can pay the ransom, which Colonial Pipeline did. We're not going to condone it. We're not going to recommend it. And in fact, there may be legislation soon to make that illegal. Okay, so that's one option: pay the ransom. The second option is to restore your backups. Okay, easier said than done. Okay, you have to have backups. And by the way, the backups need to actually work. So you need to test your backups. And also your backups need to be secure. So here in the state of Texas, a couple of years ago, we were hit with a ransomware campaign in which 23 cities and organizations was hit with ransomware via a managed service provider. Okay, see a common theme? Now, even though some of these organizations had backups, it was useless because they kept the backups on the same network. So when the ransomware escalated across their enterprise, it eventually got to the backups and made their backups useless. So that leads to the third option. Pay the ransomware, restore your backups, and the third option is to recover, rebuild from scratch, okay? And that in Texas, those 23 cities that got impacted, that is essentially what they had to do. They lost all their data and they just had to rebuild from scratch, okay? So that unfortunately are the three main things that you can expect when you're dealing with ransomware, okay? But how is ransomware being committed? Largely through email, okay? Largely through email, okay? And through vulnerabilities in your system, okay? So again, it is very important to get a good grasp, and even on your personal side, okay? Ransomware doesn't target just big organizations; it'll target you sitting in your house, okay? So you need to make sure you have good backups. You need to have your system updated, and you need to be very, very diligent when you're dealing with emails and things like that. So what are our recommendations to really narrow your footprint when it comes to being a target of ransomware? So I sort of kind of hinted on a lot of these things. So number one, update your software, okay? When Atlanta got hit by that SamSam ransomware, SamSam is a unique ransomware, at least in that time, because SamSam exploited, and it's the same, again, this is the same malware or ransomware that Farmington was hit with as well. But SamSam exploited known vulnerabilities, okay? So because Farmington and the city of Atlanta failed to adequately patch their systems, it was largely a self-inflicted wound, okay? Because if they had updated and patched their system, it would have monumentally minimized the overall impact, okay? Well, what will cost millions of dollars could have been reduced down to something a little more manageable, okay? Never click on links or open attachments, especially on unsolicited emails. Make sure you back up your data regularly, okay? Keep it separate, stored offline. So how do you know the frequency of your backups? When do I need a backup? Well, that all comes down to how much data can I afford to lose? Can I afford a week's worth of data? Can I afford to lose 3 days of data? Can I afford to lose 1 day of data or 1 hour? Financial sectors cannot afford to lose pretty much any transactions. So they have a high redundancy in their backups configurations. So very expensive because they cannot afford to lose a minute. Where some of us or some organizations can probably afford to lose a couple hours, a day or whatever, but whatever that is how you need to design your backup program, okay? And then you, again, it needs to be the following bullet. You need to test your backups regularly. I have met with many organizations that were hit with something, okay? And they're like, hey, we're okay, we got backups. But they've never tested their backups. So the first time they tried to restore their backup, which was in a real world situation, guess what happened? It didn't work. It failed. So they were backing up all this time for nothing because they never was testing their backups. So testing your backups should be a formalized process, okay? Because when it hits the fan and you're depending on your backups, and you don't know, you have lack of confidence because you never test them. Again, if you regularly test them, your confidence increases. And lastly, but not least, follow basic safety practices. Again, use your gut. Okay, just something doesn't feel right, something doesn't look right. If there's probably something going on. Okay, so just, use safe browsing practices and try to keep try to minimize your social media footprint. Now, phishing. So again, phishing is the main vector for compromise for a lot of things that are going out there. It's used to steal your information. Is used to, basically a phishing is designed to get you to do something. It's trying to get you to click something, trying to get you to open something, or trying to get you to reveal information. Okay, so phishing, you just need to interrogate and find out what is the intent. What is this email asking me? Okay, so examples of phishing isn't just just emails. There could be text phishing, phone calls, we call it phishing, social media. Okay, so again, all these things you should really sort of analyze thoroughly. Now, here's an example. Okay, so again, this is a very basic example. Phishing email. Again, some of the indicators that you should be concerned about is, especially when you see an email that claims to be from your organizations or a provider or something. Okay, so first of all, figure out, okay, who this email is supposed to be from. Another clue is, look, it's trying to direct me to do something. Okay, direct you to a website that looks real, and some of these fake websites can look exactly the same. It is not difficult to spider or crawl a website and then really just rebuild it in a fake environment. Okay, the phishing email may ask you to call a number. Okay, don't trust the number. Go yourself and use your means to find out what the if the numbers match, then so be it. But I always say trust but verify. Look, they're telling me to click this link or to click this or to call this number, but let me just verify. Okay, call someone, verify, and that way it feels a little more legitimate. And another is that it claims that you must update. There's some type of urgency. Okay, they're putting your a knee to your neck. They're really there's a countdown. There's some type of urgency. What you need to do this now. That needs to be something you need to consider as well. And lastly, is threaten dire consequences. If you don't do X by X, then we will delete your account or whatever. So there's always some type of impact that an email will be claiming, again, trying to amp you up to get you to do something. So here's a little test for you guys. So just kind of look at this briefly. This is an example of an email that you may get. There should be some indicator boom, right there, right in your face. There should be some indicators that, should alert you that, look, something isn't right here. Okay. So give you a couple of seconds to look through it. Okay. Tick, tick, tick. So this is what you should have discovered. Okay. So from the from line, it looked legitimate, but the domain looked a little different. Maybe there was an extra L. Or maybe they used a 1 to look like an L or whatever, okay? Something didn't look right. Also, in the subject line, they put ASAP. There's that urgency that I was telling you about, okay? But also, everything highlighted in red, those are spelling errors, grammatical errors, okay? Those should be red flags as well. You see that where I circled that folder? That icon represents a zip file. There is an attached zip file, okay? Why are you sending a zip file, okay? Mostly we expect a PDF, a Word document, things like that. But a zip file, what you don't want to see is an exe file, okay? But you see a zip file could embed an executable file. So that should be a red flag right there as well. Why are they sending a zip file? And then on the bottom right, which I have a hard time seeing so right there, if you hover over the link, again, it tells you a fake website, but look at the extension, .exe. If you click that, it's going to go to that website and launch this executable, okay? So again, just a little kind of a methodology of how to interrogate an email. Okay, so how to protect against spam and phishing. Number one, just be suspicious. Look, don't tell yourself, look, there's no reason for them to target me, okay? Everyone's a target, okay? So be suspicious of emails, especially from unknown senders. Do not provide personal or corporate or organizational sensitive information via email as well, okay? Do not use your contact information. Do not use the contact information provided in the email or phone. Like I said, if someone says, click here, call this number, look, contact your organization directly. If somebody's claiming to be iTunes or Apple, call Apple yourself. Call Wells Fargo yourself. Do not send sensitive or personal information, okay? Do not send your driver's license number, your birth date, your social security number, your address. That should not be in a open, unsecured email, especially from or internet website, especially if you don't see SSL, which is HTTPS. So password tips. This is my last slide. Again, if you guys follow these steps or a combination of these things, you're going to be well ahead of the curve, and you're going to minimize your overall likelihood of getting attacked. So make sure you use different passwords for every different account. I know that's cumbersome. I know, okay? But if you reuse the same password, if that password gets compromised, then that password can potentially expose your other accounts, okay? So use a different password. Use the longest password allowed. I know there's a minimum number of passwords or minimum number of characters. So a lot of times they'll say, okay, it needs to be 8 characters. Well, what's the maximum? Okay, so if the minimum is 8, if the maximum is 20, use the 20. Okay, because brute force password crackers can exponentially hack an 8-character password, no matter if it has complexity, versus a 20-character. 20-character will take like thousands of years, where an 8-character password may take a week. Okay, again, it all just depends on the processing ability of your adversary. Use a mix of uppercase, lowercase letters, and numbers and symbols. Okay, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. And try to use phrases or expressions, not words. Okay, so again, that can make it easier to build these longer passwords. And try to reset your passwords every few months. Okay, so yeah, it's even hard for me, but just put in the calendar, look, update your passwords, and that way, if the password does get scraped, does get compromised, you have remediated that concern because you've updated the password. Now, last one on the bottom. This is probably the best advice to help you do everything that's on this list. Use a password manager. A password manager is something that will basically store your passwords. It will help generate your passwords, and as well as so from here on out, you don't need to memorize 100 passwords. You just need to memorize that one password to get into the password manager. And then from there, you can basically store, update, revise, create passwords. It's fantastic. So I don't even try to remember passwords anymore. And I don't even try to generate passwords myself, with phrases. I just click the button, it'll generate a password for me. I'll save it, apply it, we're good to go. So, all right, folks, that is it. This is my contact information. So if there's any other questions or concerns, if you'd like a copy of the slides, just let me know. I'd be happy to make that happen. But I wanted to make sure I reserve some time for any questions.
Thank you, George, for that very informational presentation. As folks get ready and queue up the passwords, I'd like to remind everybody, if you do have a question, please feel free. If you would like to unmute and ask it yourself, we ask that you raise your hands by using the reactions emoticon, and we will call on you. Otherwise, just plug the question into the chat and we will get to that as well. But while folks are thinking of their questions, I do have one. For the food and agriculture sector, typically a lot of businesses are limited to just the owner operator, and they don't always have a lot of access to a dedicated IT professional. What should these kind of professionals do if they suspect that they've been hacked?
All right, yeah, so obviously I work with from small to large. I work with a lot of one-person IT shops or shops that are really being managed by a company or a provider of some sort. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you just got to make sure you do your due diligence in assuring that your interests are set, are preserved. But when it comes to situations like that, we can help complement or offset or assess their approach and how they're managing your environment to kind of point out some of the outliers. Okay, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but really that's going to really, because really everyone just trusts that they've got your best interest. But these organizations are not just managing your environment, they're managing probably 100 others. Okay, and so they themselves may be stressed or limited to the level of granularity that they can do. So some concerns should be there. So we do assessments. I have a supply chain assessment called EDM, External Dependency Management, in which we help you better manage the risk of your outside dependencies. Okay, so that's building requirements, developing policies and procedures, making sure that they can meet your requirements, and et cetera. Okay, and as well as, and again, like I said, we could come out and do some hygiene type of things as well. So we have free vulnerability scan services that we can do. That's weekly. So there's a lot of things that we can do. So it's not there's not an easy answer. It really depends on the situation. So it really just I would just say, look, if you have concerns, you want a second set of eyes, we'd be happy to talk with you guys, and just to kind of see if there's some additional complements we can do to help reassure that your best interests are considered. So on that note, I do see another question about passwords. How secure are these password managers? They're pretty secure. Okay, so these password managers use like AES, 128, 256-bit encryption, very, very secure, versus the ones in the browser. So I would recommend you do not store passwords in your browsers or banking information or not. I know it'll prompt you. Do you want me to save this? Don't, because if your browser gets hacked, bots can go in there and scrape out information. Okay, when I was in a forensic world, that was easy for me to do because it's not an elaborate encryption scheme to pull that information out. Okay, so but basically, if you're using an outdated browser and you venture to a website that scans your browser, it notices you have an outdated browser, and then it launches a vulnerability attack against that browser, it can scrape that information out. Okay, so I would just not recommend storing any sensitive information in your browser. Another question was about in the cloud type of managers. Those are fine as well. They're going to be encrypted in the cloud. It'll make it more accessible. But then again, you have to be on the internet to access that client or that service as well. There may be some other technologies in which they may have something on your system as well, but there's a lot of options. So really, the main point is use a password manager on cloud, on your system, or even on thumb drive. Is probably what I would prefer. Plug it in when you need it would probably be a good methodology. Is there insurance policy that can be purchased? Yes. So cyber insurance is being used a lot. In fact, a lot of the ransomware actors do their research. When they're targeting a company X, Y, or Z, they'll already know that if they're using cyber insurance or not. And they'll have a good idea of what their policy is aligned for, and then they will ask the amount, which probably will cover the policy. So it probably won't be a coincidence that, look, we asked for $2 million and your policy is for $2 million. Okay, so I think somebody mentioned LastPass without plugins like LastPass. Again, I probably wouldn't. Well, again, I don't know enough about those plugins and about every type of managers out there. But again, it would be better to as long as that LastPass is securely stored, you know, in your system in some part, but in a plugin is just a mechanism to access that may be okay. But also there may be some concerns because, again, if your browser is compromised, that may be a vector to get into your password manager. Okay, not saying it is the case. I just, you know, tend to not make it. Again, I always say security is inconvenient. Okay, the more convenient you make your life, the more convenient it is for the attackers as well. So, but again, using a password manager of some capacity is going to make vast improvements. Just be a little cautious about how you implement that versus, you know, via browser, via plugin, via on your system, via on the cloud. You know, and again, it's not my job to kind of tell you which one to do. It's just use one. You know, and again, we're vendor agnostic. I can't say LastPass. I can't say this or that. It's just, look, you know, find one that you're comfortable with, that you've done your research, and then sort of kind of go from there. How should a company do security awareness training for its users? Is once a year good, or is it better to have multiple times a year? Well, I think the de facto standard is once a year. That's minimally the standard. I mean, I'll be honest, that's what we do. Okay, and in fact, I think with every organization I've been to, it's been once a year. Now, a more aggressive, more forward-leaning type of organization, you know, sees the value of security awareness, and in that case, yeah, it may be worthwhile to keep that refamiliarization. So having it multiple times a year probably wouldn't be a bad idea if that's something that you know, you can afford, you know, because of your availability and things like that. So obviously there's you know, there's a delicate balance of how much time do we allocate toward security versus, you know, what you're actually there to do. So there is a delicate balance, and you know, that determination will have to be based on the risk posture and profile and tolerance of the organization. Okay, so if you can't tolerate to be down at all, then maybe more frequent familiarization would be good. But if you have a lower attack posture because, you know, you're not like a financial sector, then maybe you could afford to back away and do a more of an abbreviated or longer gap in between that type of thing. But then again, it all depends are you doing additional things? You know, is the organization doing phishing campaigns? You know, know before, phish me, things like that. These are ways to kind of test your overall ability to apply what you're learning. Okay, so again, if it's just a cybersecurity awareness thing, you know, where you click through it, yeah, that may be more of a concern. But if you're complementing that with other type of platforms or assessments like you know, phishing campaigns and, you know, a variety of type of other things, that may, you know, build that, you know, again, we always say layer and defense. It'll provide a more consistent and comprehensive approach to cybersecurity. All right. Okay, I don't see any more questions, so I know we're coming.
So we do have a hand raised in the queue.
Okay.
Go ahead, Carlos.
Carlos.
Thank you, Marshall, and George. Thank you so much for your presentation, full of excellent information. I have a quick question, which has to do with obviously your professional posture, maybe opinion, which has to do with the foundation of cybersecurity. Obviously, there's an allocation of budget to IT operations. My question to you would be, what's the recommended percentage? Or, yeah, what would be your professional recommended percentage of allocation, you know, from all of the IT operations budget to cybersecurity? Because to me, that's a foundation thing that needs to be set by the governing body. By the way, I'm the current interim chief information security officer for New Mexico State University, but I thought that I would get your opinion on this topic.
Yeah, that's not an easy answer. There really is no right answer. It's really dependent on the situation. It really, again, I go back to, again, it all has to align with your business risk. Okay, now if you're an organization in which you provide, like for example, services to 50,000 people, you can't afford to be down for a minute. Yeah, maybe cybersecurity or IT security probably should weigh more when it comes to funding and budgeting. But these are battles and issues that my stakeholders deal with every single day. I deal with organizations that don't have a formalized budget. They don't have a formalized percentage. It's just more of kind of ad hoc, conditional. Usually something needs to happen and then they react. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle that a lot of organizations, and I know for us on the cybersecurity side, on the IT side, we see the tremendous value, but it's hard to translate that into the business sense. So again, the organizations need to first identify what is our critical service, what is our crown jewels, what is absolutely we need to protect. Do we need to secure everything, or is there something fundamentally, yes, we cannot afford for this to be compromised, et cetera. And then you sort of build your security around that. So it's not an easy answer, and I'm sorry I can't give you a straight answer. It's really just, the answer is it depends. All right. Okay, anybody else?
I don't see any more questions in the chat or in the queue. So folks, I think we have about time for one or two more questions. If someone would like to unmute and ask, please feel free to do so.
All right, so Marshall, I at least want to offer, I will send a copy of these slides, and you could promote this internally as much as you want, and even externally. Again, there's nothing sensitive about this, but again, if you want to learn more about who we are, what we do, again, at a one-on-one perspective, I'd love to have that one-on-one conversation, because we do a lot of things like penetration testing, vulnerability scans, assessments, tabletop exercises. There's a lot of things that we do, and it's all no cost. So at least want to do that last plug out there for you guys as well. But again, appreciate your guys' time, the opportunity, and I'd be happy to work with you guys more in depth if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. That was a wonderful presentation, and we will be sure and reach out to you for further information. And I would like to introduce Mr. Tom Dean, who's the co-director of the Southwest Border Food Protection and Emergency Preparedness Center, for closing remarks.
Hey, we would definitely like to thank everybody for jumping on here this afternoon. Mr. Reeves gave us a lot of great information, and as this ransomware becomes more prevalent here in the United States, we definitely have our work cut out for us. And I think from what I gathered from the information today, and I'm no cyber wizard, but it takes all of us being a little more diligent in what we've got with our technology to be able to help any of our ag producers or companies that we're working with keep things from happening. So hopefully this was of value to any of you. Please we'll get the recording and we'll send out that link. But if you have producers that you're working with and would like to supply them with this video, please make sure and do that. Thank you, Marshall, for getting things set up. We appreciate it.
All right, that concludes this webinar. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and have a wonderful rest of your day.